Hey, how's it going, guys? Ancient Rune here with a one Seaman build video, and today I'll be going over my silent Anabasis build. This build focuses on the ice crystals, frost vortex, and ice missiles that's on to do amazing AoE damage as well as very good bossing. This version is focused on staying at high HP instead of the low HP meta, as it is something I don't enjoy and just like to be able to take some hits. So with that, you will see my overall DPS being lower than other people's builds, but still more than viable to clear content easily. But despite that, I still will mention some options for low HP with looter mods, as well as being able to take advantage of downstar mods and related starfall inversion tech. I also want you to keep in mind the damage I am showing is not peak for my build, as I don't have perfect rolls, and that'll just keep improving the better rolls you get. Now let's get into it. Alright, and first off, of course, with the weapon, we have the Silent Anabasis. This has a 15% chance to trigger Frost Vortex on hit. Hitting a target generates an Ice Crystal with a cooldown of 1.5 seconds. Ice Crystals automatically shatter after 15 seconds, dealing Frost Elemental status damage equal to 100% PSI intensity to nearby targets. Frost Vortex damage applies. These ice crystals can also be shattered by shooting them, which will increase the damage they deal to 350% PSI intensity, and this is a 40% damage against metahumans. And then as well, giving a 30% frost elemental damage bonus, plus an additional 8% for every ice crystal shattered for 15 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. So this will give up to 54% elemental damage right here. Now looking at Frost Vortex, traps enemies within a 4.5 meter radius. It inflicts 30% PSI intensity as status damage per second for 4 seconds. Up to 2 vortexes may exist at a time. The additional damage is frost, cannot crit, cannot strike weak spots, and will not decay with distance. Then it says the actual factor is 30% times 1 plus Frost Vortex damage factor bonus times 1 plus Frost Vortex final damage bonus. Now what's nice is that what Frost Vortex gets usually will buff all our other stuff like the ice crystals, and on here we have ice missiles, making it really easy to share these bonuses. So these types of bonuses we'll mainly be looking for on this build is going to be elemental, including frost, and then status damage, as well as frost vortex damage where it applies. So for the calibration, we are going rapid shot style. This does decrease our attack, but it does increase our fire rate and reload speed, and we are constantly shooting, spawning different frost vortexes and ice crystals and all of that. So having this helps a lot. And then you're going to want the double elemental damage roll. For the accessories, we're basically just evening out stability and accuracy. I don't really know which one's better, but it's easy to have pretty good even out, as well as good amount of reload speed. So what I like to use is the range compensator, as it gives accuracy and stability. You also have the hammer compensator, which gives a little bit more accuracy for less stability there. For the scope, it really doesn't matter. You can get better stability from like the complex reflex sight, but I really like having a big zoom, so you could go the ×3 or the ×4, and this just helps. This just means I can shoot enemies from farther away and snipe them, so it kind of acts like a ranged sniper, which is nice. This is really for if I'm just kind of like shooting a couple times. I can give an example here. I just kind of go and shoot a couple shots as it just spawns the crystals. I'm not focusing on like the full shooting, so depending on how you're doing your combat, that will depend on the scope, but this is one of the least important parts. And then I like to use the elite vertical grip, as this gives both accuracy and stability. Compared to here, this just gives a little bit more accuracy, and this gives a little bit more stability. It just gives a best of both worlds. You also have like the tactical combine grip for a little bit more stability, and then you have the compact infrared indicator for a little bit more stability as well, so that can just depend. And then for the mag, I don't go the legendary mag, we go the light rifle mag. This gives increased reload speed and stability. Really here for the reload speed, since we're always and constantly reloading. We only have a level 36 mag with constant, pretty fast fire rate. So getting more reload speed is really important. And you'll see with some other stuff, getting back to shooting is also really important for us. The extended rifle mag just gives us more mag size and less reload speed. And since we're always reloading, this is not a good thing to have. Then for the ammo, we are going the disintegrating AP ammo. This will give us increased damage to enemies affected by Frost Vortex. Now for our secondary, we are looking for stuff to apply Bullseye. Bullseye is going to be a type of debuff that will gain us percent increased damage for 12 seconds. So we have two options. My go-to is going to be the Bingo. Has a 70% chance to trigger the bullseye upon a weak spot hit, but also after switching weapons, the first hit will trigger a bullseye. This is the biggest thing here. So we just swap to it, shoot it, swap back to our main gun, and not have to worry about critting or a chance. It's just automatically applied. It does have a weak spot boost as well. Does not matter here, as our gun is not applying or not dealing weak spot except for the base bullets, and that's not our big damage dealer here. Then we also have the Wildfire. This is a gun I never use over the Bingo, but it is an option, so I don't really have one made. But it has a 60% chance to trigger bullseye when hitting a target. So this is really nice for that if there's not an open weak spot like there is with the bullseye here for the hitting a weak spot chance. Usually doesn't really matter here, but for this specific part, it would be impactful. Then for the melee, we're looking at the Kukri, because when defeating an enemy with a heavy strike, PSI intensity is increased by 20%. And this is just more damage, as our Frost Vortex, Ice Crystals, and all that is dealing damage based off of PSI intensity. But the problem with the Kukri is that it cannot be crafted. It can only be dropped in areas that give weapons like monoliths, silos, prime wars, stuff like that. So it is going to take a little bit to get. You can also get a calibration with heavy attack damage, as this will help. Just make sure we get the kill. But what we are going to use to help guarantee this kill is not actually killing an enemy, but using these sticky ice crystals. Now, how you get them is going to be from the ice pot deviation, and they will just generate them. So you could just throw them on the ground and then melee with the heavy strike, and that will be activating as a damage boost. Then for the deviation, we have two options, really just one big one, but technically have a second one. So our main one's going to be the Polar Jelly. This will go after an enemy and do a constant status effect, and enemies affected by the status effect will take increased frost damage, elemental damage boost. And if frost vortexes are formed inside this radius of damage it does, it will also create ice spikes, which is just another thing dealing damage. I got this really nice one with 5-star and growing pains, so this is just dealing insane stuff. But also we have it as the Starfall inversion, and this will give us increased status damage as well to be almost 40% damage boost there. Technically, also another thing you can use is the Starfall inversion mini feaster, or just the mini feaster, as this will give increased status damage. But the Polar Jelly giving us this elemental damage and the ice spikes form is just really nice. This also does give a little bit extra status damage, so you can keep that in mind. But for the main part, you're going to be going the Polar Jelly. Now for the gear, but before we get into that, if you haven't, make sure to like the video if you enjoy, and subscribe to the channel for more Once Human content, and comment down below any guns you'd like to see. So for the key gear, our main thing is going to be the Snow Camo Gloves. When an ice crystal shatters, 4 additional ice missiles will launch at nearby enemies, dealing status damage equal to 50% PSI intensity to targets hit, and frost vortex damage applies. So this just adds more stuff to our silent Anabasis with its ice crystals, making us just be able to deal more damage. This is what I mainly go. But you also have the option of the Frost Tactical Vest. Frost Vortex generates ice spikes that deal frost damage of 100% PSI intensity. But I don't want to focus on Frost Vortex damage here. I'd rather do it on another build. So I just keep with the Snow Camo Gloves as I keep it a little bit thematic. So I haven't really done a damage comparison compared the two, but if I eventually do an Abyss Glance, which I do plan to, I will be doing a Frost Vortex focused build, which will include the Frost Tactical Vest. Now, for the rest, with the gear sets, you are looking at 3-piece Shelter and 2-piece Savior. Now, I go 3-piece Shelter for the elemental damage plus the stacking. We are reloading a good amount, but we're able to stack those boosts so fast. I've never really noticed a problem, and there isn't really anything else I would go here. And then we go the Savior set because this gives status damage when HP is above 70%, and this is IHP focused. But also the medicine cooldown rate allows us to heal faster, which is really nice, especially when we get in some sticky situations. And then for the low HP version, we have the Treacherous set. You can go 3-piece Treacherous for up to 50% damage increase of status damage at 30% max sanity, and this will just be huge. But with this, you would want to go 2-piece Shelterer for the 8% elemental damage. You could also go 2-piece Blackstone for the elemental damage here as well, 2% more elemental damage. Now you can also go just 2-piece Treacherous, so you still have a little bit more HP here. You just have to be below 70% HP for this 12%, which is more than the 10% you get from the Savior set. And then you can go just 3-piece Shelter here. Now, how you would get that low with the sanity easily would be stuff like spoiled food or sanity corrosion capsules. I'd go sanity corrosion capsules. It is more spamming, but it means you're holding less stuff. Spoiled food will give minus 200 sanity, while capsules will give minus 100. But with the spoiled food, you will need to make sure you have antibiotics with you for healing the gastric discomfort that spoiled food will do. Now for the mask hide, there is a couple things we can get. We're mainly looking for elemental damage and status damage and potentially frost damage, which is the same as elemental damage, but wording. So I am going to just go down this list. My main one I go is Starfall Down because I'm taking advantage of airborne stuff with Starfall Inversion. This gives 15% status damage. Then you also have a rabbit fur here. You can get the lucky rabbit fur, which will give the most, but you have these lower ones here. And even though we're not constantly critting it, there's still a chance. So you have that there with the elemental. Then we have the different wools for different status damage. Then we have bearskin for frost damage, as well as floating ice bearskin for even more frost elemental damage. Cave bear skin for elemental damage while crouched. Velvet for status effect damage while dampened. Lunar rabbit fur for elemental damage, and then lunar wool for status damage. Dream fused rabbit fur for elemental damage. Now for the mods, but first I'll go over the passives. So what we're going to be looking for on Dream fused wool for status damage. And then we're back to the Starfall Down with the status damage while airborne, which is again my go-to. Now for the mods, but first I'll go over the passives. So what we're going to be looking for on our weapons and mask mod is going to be Frost Vortex. This will give Frost Vortex damage as well as Frost Elemental damage. This frost damage is the main big multiplier that will help our damage a lot, as we can get a lot of frost damage elsewhere. It's just elemental damage. We get it from our talent mods, we get it from our gear, we get it from our deviation. So there's a lot of options there. So this is the main thing. My mods actually aren't that good with Frost Vortex, so I'm still farming for this Frost Vortex for frost damage. But then you're also going to be looking for damage against elites and damage against great ones. Elites is for silos, while Great Ones is for monoliths. So you're basically just going between these two. Now, it is not terrible to do talents. I've done just talents before and done plenty of damage. You just go elemental status or reload. Reload speed's pretty nice, but I'd probably go status. And then again, the elemental plus great ones. And even then, you are still going talents for your other mods if you're not doing Downstar or Lunar. So I'll go over Lunar here. You again go elemental and status, just like talents, and then go elite or great ones. And this will just give huge damage boost compared to talents. I believe it's double compared to talents. Yeah, you got the 8 and 6. So that is just absolutely huge. I don't know if you get the full bonus of 30% health with the Chartreuse, but it still is very good and more than you would. And then we have Downstar. This is going to be with Elemental and Status again, and then Elite and Great Ones. And how you are going to keep up all this while airborne stuff is going to be with the Gravity Neutralizer. This will keep you in mid-air, and so you will just activate it and then hold jump or hold ADS and you will stay like this, and then you can just shoot the enemies and get that damage boost. And we'll have some other stuff to help keep us at higher height for areas where we don't have this Starfall inversion event happening during combat. Alright, so now for the actual mod. So first off, for our main mod, we are going Vortex Multiplier. This increases the number of Frost Vortexes, but also increases the Frost Vortex damage. Frost Vortexes increase will just mean more damage applying elsewhere. It's nowhere near as much damage as the Ice Crystals, but it's still dealing good damage, so there is that to keep in mind. Now, something you could do with high HP is going to be the Frost Blessings. When Frost Vortex disappears, restore 10% HP. This can be nice. I haven't really experimented with it, but it is an option. And then there's also Cryoblast. Frost Vortex applies Frostbite. When Frostbite is active, vulnerability increased by 4% and 10% movement speed. I'm assuming that is for the enemies that move in speed, so don't worry about that. So there still are other options. This other one, enemy at the center of Frost Vortex is defeated. Deal PSI intensity, ice damage to enemies within 1 meter. Doesn't really matter here because this is just 1 meter. And for mobbing, we already have so much AoE stuff. I don't think this is really going to help. But my main thing has just been a Vortex Multiplier. And then for the bingo, we are just getting any vulnerability amplifier, which will increase the vulnerability plus 8%. So this means when we apply Bullseye, we are getting a 16% damage boost right there. So that is just really easy. And then I don't have anything on the Kukri, but you could put just a basic like blue that has increased melee damage, and that'll help make sure you get that kill, because I have sometimes noticed it doesn't always happen. Now for the weapon mods, we have a couple options. I have a personal choice here with the work of proficiency. When reloading with an empty magazine, reload speed increased by 10% and elemental damage increased by 20%. I really like this for the reload speed. On every game, I'm addicted to reload speed. This does mean you can't reload early or you'll lose that stack. You could shoot your remaining bullets so you can get that fresh reload if you want. This is really a personal choice. What I would actually recommend is getting a Deviation Expert, which will increase status damage as well as getting fire rate, which means we are shooting and emptying our magazine faster, which is really nice. And that status damage is really good. And I think we need more status damage. I haven't compared my damage boost in a while, but I think that is a thing that in this build. I just really like reload speed, so I go this. So that's technically an option, but I'd highly more recommend getting Deviation Expert. Then for the mask, we are going Frost Construct. This is going to increase the damage of our ice spikes, ice missiles, and ice crystals, deal 10%. If the target is in Frost Vortex status, damage dealt is increased by another 10%. So this is just an even more damage boost which is really, really nice for our main damage dealers. And we're benefiting from all of these. We got the ice spikes with our deviation spawning. We've got the ice missiles spawned from our ice crystals. And then again, ice crystals are being spawned. So just easy damage boost here. I don't think there's really anything else you would even want to get. The other thing's just about Frost Vortex final damage, which on here, it doesn't matter. I don't know about other Frost Vortex builds. I haven't put in research to that. But for here, I would not go it. Then for the chest, you're really just looking for anything with good passives. I really like Rejuvenating. Now, if you're going a low HP build, this is useless. But on a high HP build, this is really nice, just helping get extra XP. Just making sure you get those good damage boosts you want. The only other mod I use is Quick Comeback, but on here we like reloading, so getting this Restore Magazine isn't very helpful, and you would be using your healing item a lot on this build. Then we have Abnormal Increase, which will increase status damage by 10% for 12 seconds, stacks up to 3 times for a 30% status damage increase. Since we're constant reloading, this is really, really good. You could also go Reload Rampage, but since we're reloading so much, this isn't good. And it also messes with how often we reload because it's refilling those bullets. Yes, the status damage is nice, but one stack of our other mod, the Abnormal Increase, will beat that. So this is so much better. And when paired with Work of Proficiency, we like reloading and helps us just get to the end of our magazine. And then for our gloves, you are going either Status Enhancement for the status damage or Elemental Overload for the elemental damage. This is going to be based off of what passives you have that are better, and also what damage bonuses you need. Now, since I have just a really good status enhancement, I've really been using this, and I haven't made a good elemental overload. I've just been sticking with this, but if I did need more elemental damage, I would go with this instead. So it's really just evening out what bonuses you need and what better passives you have. Then for the boots, I go Covered Advance. When not taking damage for 4 seconds, you gain 20% status damage for 30 seconds, and this 30 seconds cannot be interrupted even when you take damage. That only gets interrupted during those 4 seconds. This effect resets when the duration ends. So after those 30 seconds are up, you just got to take no damage for 4 seconds. Then you've got another 30 seconds of damage increase. Really, really easy to keep up. Now, if you're going low HP, there is also Rush Hour, which will give 4% HP for every 10% HP lost. If you're going the very low HP build at the 30% sanity, then you will have 28%, which is more than 20%. If you're not doing that, then you will have Covered Advance. Also, if you already have a Covered Advance, it's only an 8% damage increase, so it's not the biggest thing in the world, but it is more damage and more consistent, so just choose what you want with that. Now for the Cradle. First off, we have Anti-Void. Gain increased damage with our rifles, as well as dealing 100% damage against void enemies. Then we have Rapid Aid. This gives us medicine cooldown for being able to spend medicine more. You want to be above 70% health, so this is very helpful. Then I have Aerial Suppression. Well, airborne, gain 30% damage reduction, which is really nice. Then we have Deviant Energy Defense. This is going to give us a shield based off 30% of our max HP. Very helpful for the damage reduction. And this is really just a must-have. You could just activate your Deviation at the beginning of combat and then pull it away and then bring it back out when you're ready for the fight. It also just means less damage hit to your health, which means we are keeping our HP up faster. Then we have Status Enhancement. Status damage plus 15% for 3 seconds after hitting a weak spot. So our damage does not weak spot, but our main bullet does. So you still want to hit weak spots just for this damage boost. Tactical Leap, while airborne, gain increased damage against deviants and increased 10% against their shields for 3 seconds, up to 60 seconds. is really nice because you don't have to be airborne to take advantage of it. You just have to be airborne to get the stacks. Then we have Elemental Sense. After dealing elemental damage, the corresponding element's damage is increased by 25% for 4 seconds. Very easy. Frost damage gone there. And then we have Extreme Freezing. When dealing Frost elemental damage, Frost Vortex damage increased by 2.5% and inflict deviance with 3% slowdown for 8 seconds up to 10 stacks. Freezes targets when fully stacked up to 1 time per target. So 25% Frost Vortex damage here is really, really nice. And then for the food, first off, we have the mixed fried hot dog, used to increase damage against enemies with bullseye by 20%. Really strong. Now, if you have that second food buff slot because of chef, then you also can have bone and deviated sausage for increased damage against bosses when you're bossing. Or something fun is Layered Galaxy, gain increased elemental damage while airborne. For the drink slot, you have Whimsical Drink, increased status damage by 25%. And then as a second slot or alternative, you have Stardust Energy Drink, gain double jump. Now, this is really good when using Starfall because we need to be at higher level for that increased 4% and up to 3% status and elemental damage. So that is very helpful. What I also don't have is there is a food that I believe increases our Frost Vortex damage, which could be replaced with Layered Galaxy or Bone and Deviated Sausage. But what's really nice for these meat-related foods is that we also get the deer meat, which gains even more damage against enemies affected by bullseye. Now, lastly, we have the gameplay loop. This is really how you're going to be stacking up your damage, mainly against our bosses. Otherwise, you don't really need this most of the time. I don't do too many nightmares, so I don't worry about that, but when I do, it's fine. So first off, you're going to want to make sure you have all your food buffs active. I do not have food at this time, but you would want to make sure. Then you are going to throw out the sticky ice crystal, and then you want to hold out our bingo, and then get our frost slash ready with this, and throw it there. Make sure this is not close to the other one. Then activate the heavy attack. Do that. Get our gravity neutralizer ready. And then get to shooting. And then when these ice crystals spawn, you can shoot them. I've got this nice fun effect going. And you'll see our damage is slowly stacking up. And if I had more energy buffs, I would have even more damage going. And that's basically it for the playstyle. I hope you guys enjoyed the build video. If you have any questions or suggestions for improvements, make sure to comment them down below. This is by far my favorite gun so far in Once Human, and I loved building around it as well as the options on how to build it. The AoE and different damage formulas make it very enjoyable to work with. When I first saw this and used it, I was like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Once Human content, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.